Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this new video in Python. In this video, we will be discussing about variables in Python. When we do programming, many times we need to read and write from the memory. So each of these memory spaces is identified by a unique hexadecimal number. So which is often very hard to be remembered by the humans. So what we do is that we will assign different names to represent these memories. So instead of using ID, we use different names to these memories so that we can easily identify it. So such names which we use to represent a memory space is called a variable. So here down below you can see a simple representation of a memory. So each of these memory spaces will contain values. So here it contains a, here it contains a value of 20, and here a float value of 12.5, and here it contains a value of hello string. So each of these memory has got an id like this. Each of these memory spaces has an id which is mentioned right below. So if we want to identify these memory spaces, we need to remember these hexadecimal id, so which is very difficult always. So instead of identifying these memory spaces with the help of these IDs, instead we assign them some names which are called variables. So in simple words, a variable, it represents a location in the memory where we can store different kinds of data types which are available in Python. So variables are to make it more simple, let's understand that variables are just containers into which some data is being stored. So any data types which are available in Python which can be stored inside these variables. So now we look on to how to assign values to variables. So first, storing data in a variable. So here I am defining a variable name and I am assigning a value with the help of this equal sign, and I am assigning a string value which says stack up. So if we print this stack up variable, we can see what is inside this. If we print this variable called name, we can see what is present inside this variable. So it shows up the string stack up is present inside this variable name. So instead of storing string, we can store any other kind of data type inside this variable. For example, let me write down another variable called age, and let me put a value of 20 which is an integer, and let me print this variable. So let me run this cell and it shows up 20. So we can store any data types available in Python inside this variable. So the next is we have now assigned a value to a variable. Now what if we need to change the value inside a variable? So first is let me show you what is the current value inside this variable. So when I run this print name, it shows up stack up is the value present here, and now I changed it to name equal to YouTube, and then again when I print this name variable, it shows up that YouTube, which means that the string value inside this variable name has been changed from stack up to YouTube. So simply changing a value in a variable is same as assigning a value in a variable in Python. Now how can we assign multiple values to multiple variables at a time? So here I am writing all the variable names with which are separated by comma. The variable names are name, age and place, and let me assign Amin, which is a string, to this variable name, and age of 20, which is an integer, to this variable named age, and India, which is a string which can be assigned to this place. So let me, if you print out all these things, so if you print out the name, it contains Amin, and when we print out this age, it contains 20, which is an integer, and again if we print this place variable, and it contains India. So the first string will be assigned to this first variable, and the second value will be assigned to the second variable, which is age, and third value which will be stored in this variable called place. So now we will assign a common value to multiple variables. So I am declaring three variables, which is name, first name and last name, and I am assigning a common value to all of these declared variables, which is a string Amin. So if you print out all these name, first name and last name, we can see that all these variables contain the same value, which is Amin. So far we have discussed about how to store data in a variable, how to change values stored in a variable, and how to assign multiple variables at a time, how to assign values to multiple variables at a time, and assigning a common value to multiple variables. So next we will be looking at is rules for defining names to variable. So there are some rules existing in Python which we need to follow when we give some names to these variables. So we will look onto these rules one by one. So these rules are to be strictly followed whenever you declare any variable when you program in Python. So the first rule is variable name should contain only alphanumeric characters and underscore, which means that these variable names can contain alphabets from A to Z and the numeric characters 0 to 9 and underscore. So any of the characters which comes under these three alphanumeric or underscore, which can be used for naming these variables. So here I have declared a variable which contains an alphanumeric character, which means an alphabet, and an integer or a number and an underscore. So we can use alphanumeric and underscore to naming variables. Okay, so next is variable name should not start with number. So here if you observe, I have given the variable name as one age and assigned it a value 12. Actually this is wrong in Python. So if we try to let me type it down, one age equal to 12, and if we run this cell, the Python gives an error of invalid syntax because I have used a number in front of the which means I have used a number in the beginning of the name of the variable. So this is not allowed in Python. So what if I use age1 instead of one age? Let us check. So if I give age1 equal to 12 and let me run this cell, it is working fine. The Python is showing no error. And what if I print it down, age1, print age1, and then when I run the cell, it shows 12 is stored in this variable age1. So there is no problem with giving numbers into the variable names at the end, but it should not start with a number. So the next rule is variable should start with a letter or an underscore. So here if you observe, I have used the variable name place, which is an alphabet, and assigned it a value of India, and I have used an underscore at the beginning, which is also valid, and place underscore and assigned it a value of Bhutan, and here I have used uppercase P, and here I have used uppercase P for place and assigned it a value USA, and in the middle of this variable I have used uppercase C and assigned it a value France, and I have used all the letters capital for this variable and assigned it a value Germany. So all these ways we can assign names to variables. So let us check if all these are valid. Let me run all these code here, which is work. Let me run this cell. Yeah, it is working fine. Python is throwing no error, which means it is working. And next, let me print it out. Let me copy it, each one of these down below and place. It is also working fine. and then again this place equal to Bhutan, which is also working fine, and then place equal to USA, which is also working fine, and again these two more, which is also working fine. So one more, let us print all these things. So let's copy it down. Okay, let's print all these values. Let's see if it works. So when I run the cell, it works fine. All these notations are, all these variable names are valid. So the next rule is variables are case sensitive, which means that if we declare two variables, which is a lowercase name and an uppercase name, these two variables are different. So let us check. For this variable name, I am assigning it Amin, and for this name with capital case name variable, I am assigning it a value of stack up, which is a string, and I am mixing up uppercase and lowercase again, and assigning a variable name as name and giving it a value of Charles. Let us print all these down, and when I run the cell, it shows three different values for these variable called a name, which are written, which are whose names are in different casing. So so the final conclusion is that the variables are case sensitive, which means that we can, if we use different casing in different variable names, even though it is of if it looks same, even if it is different cases, it is actually different the variables. It will be treated as different variables in Python. So the next one is variable names can contain number but not at the beginning, so which we have already discussed earlier. So here if you see age1, which is the variable name, it contains a number at the end, which is right, and here it contains number at the middle, which is also possible, and the third one, here it contains number at the beginning, but which is not possible, it is wrong. So if we try to print each of these, let me declare this variable. Now let me print this variable age1. If I hit enter, it gives an value of 20, which means this variable name age1 is valid. And then again, let me declare this second variable, and let me print this same variable, and it also gives me 23, which means that is also valid. So if we, in the next cell, if we try to print, let me declare this variable first, and now I try to print this variable. Let us check, is it going to be a valid variable name? Yeah, that's it. So the Python shows an invalid syntax, which means that numbers at the beginning is not allowed, but numbers at the end and the middle of the variable names is allowed. So the next one is Python keywords cannot be used as variable names. So for your understanding, keywords are reserved words in Python which has some special meaning in Python programming language. So these keywords cannot be used as variable names. So we will discuss about what is keywords in the upcoming lectures. So now you understand that keywords are just some reserved words in Python which only Python which can be only used in inside a Python syntax. So we cannot simply use it for declaring any variable name. So these are the list of the keywords available in Python, which are false, none, true, and, as, assert, async, await, break, class, continue, def, del, elif, else, except, finally, for, from, global, and so on. So many Python keywords are available which are reserved in Python programming language, which cannot be used by any programmer for declaring these variables. So if you so let us look into what will happen if we try to declare a variable. So let me copy one of these keywords. So let me take global keyword, and let me try to declare a variable inside this global keyword, and let me assign a value of 12. And what will happen if I run this cell? Okay, make it into code, and let's see what happens when we run this cell. So the Python throws an invalid syntax error, which means that this global is a reserved keyword in Python which cannot be used for giving names to these variables. So if we use any keywords in this Python, keywords listed here for assigning names to these variables, Python shows an error. So that's it for this lecture, everyone. So hope you understood this lecture. So if you have any doubts, please comment down below. See you all in the next video.